Hi and welcome to tonight's event, or this year's event, for speaking about C++. And we will be focusing on lightning talks about preparing and giving talks at C++ conferences, or just generally, preparing technical content tonight. And quickly going into my slides. So quick word on the conference. The call for talks ends tomorrow, and that's why we are today here. This year's conference will be hybrid again, but maybe you want to come to Berlin and have a big party with us there. All tracks are streamed online, and then on site we have 3 tracks, maybe 4 tracks. Let's see how things work out with sponsorships, etc. for that. But anyways, and yeah, lots of people already have submitted their talks, and you can edit your submission after you submit it, and you will be able to edit your talks until Monday, basically, when I import them to my local database and set up the voting. Then I was just will close that opportunity for you to edit your talks. And tomorrow is basically the deadline, the official deadline, and I'm probably going to keep the submissions open until Sunday. Just you lose, or you make this the window where you can think about your talk and edit things smaller when you submit later. And I moved the window a bit earlier than we usually had, because I've been moving it later to like end of June, because CPPCon was doing it, like having it later and later and later, and it makes sense for me to be on the same page as on the same date closing it as CPPCon. But now CPPCon is like on May 11th as the closing date, and I think that's a bit too early for my conference, so that's not anymore like aligned. So today, lightning talks, 5 to 15 minutes. We have 4 speakers, and use some previous videos, some contributions which we had on the prior events, which have been like, I think it's the 4th time we're doing this now. 60+ minutes, and then we have a panel after the lightning talks, and we hang out on the lounge in Hubido. So speaking tonight, Gabriel Valenzuela, Sandor Dargo, which is right now with me in the studio, we saw him, Robert Szymkowicz, and myself. Pre-recorded are Tina, Kate, and Chandler, and we'll see what they have to say in a minute. Robert is also pre-recorded and will join us in the panel, because he is actually running the user group in Vienna, and they have a meeting today. So that is the order of things today. We're starting with Sandor, and Gabriel is right now in a meeting, so we'll see how that works out. Closing with them for that reason. And that lets me bring, let's get started and have Sandor bring up his slides.
Small thing there. Hello, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sandor Dargo, and in the next few minutes, I'm going to talk about what makes a C++, or in fact any tech talk, stand out in the review process. I'm going to focus on the review process. So there are a couple of topics that I'd like to cover in these few minutes. First, we are going to say 2 ways to make your proposal stand out. But in reality, you will see it's only one. Then we'll see some key traits of a strong proposal, also some common pitfalls to avoid. I'll share a few ideas about how to get better at writing proposals. And a key message is, it might sound negative, but I think that in the end, it's more positive if you accept this fact. You have to be ready for rejection for various reasons that we'll cover. So, 2 ways to make your proposal stand out. The first one, well, you can write a recognizable proposal, something that the organizers usually ask not to do. And I agree with them. Plus, it only works for big fish speakers, and still, I find it rude if it's just a one-liner or something very short. And probably that's not why you are here tonight. So let's talk about the other option, which is writing a strong proposal. And not sure if this is good or bad news, but deep knowledge is not enough for that. Or in fact, deep knowledge in general of C++ might not be even needed. You don't have to be specialist. Something Anders Shaukaten explained in one of his blog posts nowadays. I will share the link later. You just have to know what you want to say, and you have to be able to present it in a decent way. That's all what it takes, and that's a really good news, I think. And well, with a strong proposal, you need to sell your talk. You have to be able to sell your talk first to the organizers and eventually to the attendees. So, how we can write a strong proposal? What are key traits of a strong proposal? First of all, you need clear focus and motivation, and this focus and the motivation should be visible, I think, in the proposal, but you should also feel it. You will be able to write a much better proposal like that. So you have to know what you want to talk about. It might sound obvious, but sometimes you see some proposals where it's clear that the person who proposed knows a lot about the topic, but doesn't really know what exactly they want to talk about. You should know your proposal will be better. It doesn't mean that your slides or the full outline has to be ready and shippable. You can always modify that later on. You don't have to know all the details, but you should know why you want to talk about something and why now. And this can be personal. When I say that you should know why now you want to talk about something, it doesn't mean that you have to talk about the latest things, C++ 23 or 26, or some new trend or library. It can be something new to you, or it can be something important from a work project, from a pet project. But if your why is strong enough, people who read your proposal will feel that as well, and that helps you get accepted, I think. Another maybe obvious piece of advice is that you have to pay attention to the content. You have to make it clear and well structured. Something I already mentioned. It's important that you take your time and you make your ideas clear in it, what you want to talk about, and what are the core ideas of your talk. And remember that when you talk at a conference, you don't talk just to talk. You don't talk because of yourself, but you want to teach something to other people. You want to share something with them. And you have to make it clear in your proposal what people will learn from your talk, what practical ideas they will get, what they can use in their jobs or in their lives. And you have to pay attention to the requirements. I think that, I ran into some problems earlier regarding this, because different conferences use different call for paper sites. There are not so many of them, but yet they are different. And even the input fields or the requirements on length can be different, not to mention the styling. They accept different formats. They render the content differently. So maybe you plan to submit the same proposal at several conferences, but you cannot just copy paste. You have to check how it's rendered once you submit it, and then you can still edit it and make sure that it looks right. Think about the reviewers, how they will look your proposal. It's important to make it clearly readable. So there are some common pitfalls to avoid. One is the question of length. If it's too short, well, how will the reviewers judge your proposal? Even worse, they will probably question your commitment. You submit 5, 10 lines, something. They say, okay, they don't even care about to work out their ideas. What do they want at the conference? But it doesn't mean that you should write something very long, because if it's too long, well, there is the question of, will they read it? If it's too long, maybe they won't. Or they will think like, okay, you submitted something very long. Did you even think it through? Did you spend enough time on it to make it shorter and more concise? So you have to find the right balance, because if it's too long, also maybe you wouldn't be able to present everything. It's fine. Maybe you submit for 2 hours, 2.5 hours at certain conferences. You have to make it clear in the outline, for example, that if you accept shorter time slots, where would you cut your content? To make it much better. It makes it much better. And you can't present to everyone. You have to identify your target audience, a specific group, and you shouldn't try to appeal to everyone. I think it's very difficult to give a talk which is interesting for beginners, for meteor developers, and more seasoned developers as well. If you make it, you are probably talking in a keynote, but to make a good tech talk, it's very difficult to appeal to everyone. And you should also check if your target audience overlaps with the conference's target audience. Let's say that you want to talk to engineering managers who oversee C++ teams. If the conference is not really interested in that, maybe you should change a bit your content or not submit your proposal there. There are conferences where that would be more than welcome. And you're not there for promotion. I don't think that you should promote products, libraries, not to mention political views, unless, of course, you have a sponsor slot. If you have a sponsor slot, you check with the organizers what and how much you can promote. But with a normal talk, that's not the case. So how to get better at writing proposals? First, you should use what was already presented as sources, as inspiration for you. So you can read past conference programs. You will get access to descriptions, obviously to titles. If you click on if you check the YouTube recordings, probably you will see the outline as well. So you will partially see what worked in the past, and that's something that's a big aid when you start writing proposals. You should also get into program committees who decide on conference programs, so that you will see how others write proposals. You will be able to read the comments of other reviewers, so you will know what their concerns are, what they are happy about, and you can take some notes and see later what got into the program, what worked, what didn't work. And you should be ready for rejection, because there are just so many slots and resources for organizers, and it can happen that two people they propose almost the same talk, and the organizers have to keep a balance of topics, so they will have to pick just one. But even rejected proposals will help you, because you might get some feedback from reviewers, and you will see what didn't work, and maybe you just want to fine-tune your proposal for the next time. Maybe you want to create something completely new, and these proposals might get also to the program committee, which leads back to the previous point, that you will get some more sources. So in conclusion, You should pay attention to the conference requirements and the target audience. You should write a well-structured proposal, make your selling points clear, and you shouldn't promote, just as I mentioned, selling points, right? And be ready to learn during the process and ready for rejection. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandor. Let's get back to my slides. That was really good.
So,
And you're ready to go.
okay. Welcome, everyone. When you talk about giving conference talks to other people, most people say that they don't have anything to talk about. And I said the same in the past as well. And now I have given several talks already. I still consider myself a beginner speaker, but I realized that I do have something to talk about. And in this talk, I'm going to share some possible talk ideas, and I hope you will get inspired. So first, ask yourself, what do you do? What do you do at work? What is your daily job? How do you work? Which technologies are you using? Which ones are you writing or expanding? We very easily fall into the thinking that we don't do anything interesting, or that everyone already knows what we know. But that's not true. I can guarantee that you have a unique knowledge in lots of different areas, and talking about it will benefit others. The same applies to any project, like private projects you're working on or open source projects, like anything you're working on or using. Or think about which questions, problems, or challenges have you or someone in your team encountered. There's a high probability that many people have the same questions and are in need of getting them answered. So why not turn those discussions and solutions into conference talks? So next, maybe ask yourself, what do you want to learn more about? Have you ever read an article or watched a conference talk, but you wanted to learn more about the subject? Giving a talk is the perfect opportunity for you to get the topic, to get to know the topic in depth. You will always learn a lot in the process of writing a talk, way more than just using some library feature. Or maybe you learned about some interesting concept or language feature, and you want to figure out how you can use it in your code. I always love to learn about real-life examples of the new features. So that's why I personally also like to give talks that are more practice-oriented. But don't think you need to be cutting edge to be giving a talk. The basics are very underrepresented at conferences, and most people don't use the new standards right away anyways. So consider talking about the basics. And as I said, not everyone has this knowledge, and many people will benefit from it. And tell us what excites you. Do you like the theory over examples? Then do a talk about theory. Do you like examples and live coding more than theory? Then do that. Do you want a discussion rather than a 1-hour monologue? That's also fine. A talk you're excited about will always be better than a talk that you don't care about. And there is an audience for every style of talk. Also, you can play around with those elements and find out what presentation style you prefer. It doesn't have to be perfect in the beginning. In fact, you shouldn't strive for perfection at all. Just give it your best and everything will be fine. And this, I think, is very important. Talk about your ideas. I can't tell you how often I had an idea and I talked myself out of it. It's only once I started talking about my ideas that I got some great feedback and encouragement. Others might also have a different viewpoint you can include in your talk, or they might know if there's already something similar out there. So talk about your ideas and gather some feedback and don't talk yourself out of it. And lastly, relax. Speaking might look intimidating and speakers might look like they know everything, but they are just normal people like you and me. Speaking is a skill and you learn and improve by doing it. So here's a summary of everything I just said. I hope you find something useful in it, and you can take a screenshot here at this point if you want to. So just to summarize, what are you working on? Which libraries are you using or writing? Which open source projects are you using or working on? Which questions, problems, or challenges have you or someone in your team encountered? Consider talking about the basics. Don't assume everyone knows what you know. Talk about the things that you are excited about. Take your time to find your presentation style. Talk about your ideas and get some feedback. And in the end, relax and have fun. So all I can say is you can do it, try it out, you might like it, and I'm looking forward to see a lot of new speakers. Thank you.
Thanks, Tina. Now we continue with Robert.
Content is the heart of a talk. Without content, you have no talk. But delivery is the voice. Without a voice, your content cannot reach your audience. Fortunately, good delivery can be trained by those of us, like me, who are not naturally gifted in this regard. I recently created my first C++ talk, first for my user group, later for a conference. And I came to adopt an iterative process of improvement. This is what I'd like to share with you tonight. I stole some ideas from my former singing teachers, but the resulting process is actually not unlike coding if you include things like understanding requirements, designing, reviewing, testing, and code cleanup. So how would that work for a talk? Let's assume you already have a rough idea what you want to talk about. So your first step is to collect information. Find books, articles, other talks. Discuss the topic with other people if possible. Specifically look for talks that cover a similar area than what you want to cover. Because what will you want to focus or present differently? And also you can learn from them, not only about the topic, but also about presenting it. Create code examples, play around, find out if things actually work like you think they work. Because C++ is full of surprises, sometimes even in areas we have used for years. But this phase goes beyond information on the topic. Because what style of presentation will you want to adopt? Storytelling, a lecture, walking through code, maybe even live coding? Or will you rather focus on graphics and diagrams to bring your ideas across? The topic will influence the style of presentation, and the style of presentation will influence what tools help you best creating it. And the tools will in turn influence the process of creating the talk. For example, how easy is it to update code examples in the tool of your choice? In some, it is just a click. In others, it's a tedious manual process, especially if you want to have good highlighting. On the other hand, the latter tool may be much better in graphics, diagrams, or animations, so you have to weigh your choices. Often, as I sift through information, ideas already emerge on how I could present them. Keywords, sentences, visuals, we naturally progress to the next stage, condense. Because we can only present an essence of what we have collected. So on the one hand, we have to filter and reduce. On the other, we have to expand to make our topic self-contained and complete. Here, we should always ask the question, what context does my audience need? Which in turn asks the question, who is my audience and what do they already know? Keep those questions in mind as you start writing, coding, drawing, literally playing with your topic. Follow your instinct. For this talk, I started with the blue path you see in the background and the faces. And then I let the visuals guide me further. For another, I had a finished script before I started my first real slide. Find your way and enjoy the feeling of creating something. It's important to get going, but eventually we have to take one step back and focus on what is really important. What is your main message? What ties the parts of your presentation together? People will not remember the details of a 10-minute lightning talk, let alone a 60-minute presentation. So what should they remember? Set yourself some goals, no more than 3. For example, after this talk, people understand the importance of focus and practice and have some ideas on how to practice efficiently. And formulate key takeaways such as, if a section does not really contribute to the main topic, consider removing it. With this focus in mind, it is time to review what we have done so far. For me, this is usually a time-consuming phase, but also a very rewarding one. Because the review should turn into a feedback loop, a virtuous cycle that helps us to improve the talk further and further. And the first step is to practice. Speak loudly, first with script, if you like, later without. Listen to your own voice, and you will recognize clumsy phrases, words that are hard to pronounce when put together, and similar mistakes. Note your observations, correct them, write down something in the script or notes. Also see if the words you say fit to the slide that you show. Then take the whole thing one step further and record yourself. Listen to some samples of yourself talking. Are you understandable? Do your sentences trail off at the end? Are there lots of filler noises in your speech? Here's how to get rid of them. Read a paragraph and record it. Listen. Then say to yourself, it's okay to be silent for a moment. See, nobody got hurt. Silence is your friend and sometimes necessary to give your audience time to grasp your meaning. Repeat this whole process and you will get better and better. Be kind to yourself, even as you look critically at your work. As a presentation grows longer, it will eventually outgrow your time slot and also the attention span of your audience. Like tidying, trimming a talk rarely happens by coincidence. We have to consciously get rid of too much information. And this works on multiple levels. On a paragraph by paragraph level, can you say what you say, but simpler and shorter? For example, how do the following 2 versions of the same paragraph sound? You can see with a glance at the pipeline where potential points of failure are. Compare that with, you can easily see potential points of failure by looking at the pipeline. The second version is much smoother. You can easily see what? Potential points of failure. How? By looking at the pipeline. On a bigger scale, you have to evaluate which paragraphs don't really contribute to a slide, which slides don't really contribute to a subtopic, and which subtopics don't really contribute to the main topic. For example, my first C++ talk was about monadic operations in C++23, which includes std ranges views, std optional, and std expected. Since I was talking about C++23 anyway, I included material on std print and std stack trace. Useful features, no doubt, but distracting from the main topic. Be ruthless, but keep the old material around. Maybe it will become the kernel of your next talk. We have come to the end of the path, but have we come to the end of the process? No, because it's not a one-way road. A cycle comes closer, but still does not really capture the dynamics I experienced. jumping from phase to phase in any order that made sense in that moment, sometimes blurring phases, but certainly revisiting each phase from time to time. Collect, condense, focus, review, trim. Iterate and improve. Create a virtuous cycle for yourself. For me, that was another most welcome benefit. Confidence in my talk and in my delivery. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's continue from Robert into Chandler's next. Chandler gave a very nice live demo about giving live demo.
A nice lightning talk about having good code samples and slides, and we saw a live demo of how to actually build those slides. Now it's time to have a live demo about live demos. I like meta, and so I figured this would be a fun way to do this. So here we're gonna kind of go through and do a little bit of a live demo. So what are we actually talking about? What are live demos even good for doing? So the first thing that I think about with a live demo is it's really good for zooming in on some topic, right? This is a way to engage the audience, right? Something you can show practical, real tools that you want people to use. It's really great for showing very specific code or specific details of something that's fairly complex. It's good at focusing on how, much more than why. And that means that there's also something that live demos are not really good at, and this is kind of zooming out, right? You don't want to try and step back or really get to the bigger picture with the live demo. Kind of, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't engage the audience very well. It's hard to get people to focus on what or especially why you're saying something when you're doing a live demo. They're reading the demo, right? And so if you want to kind of, highlight your perspective or focus on an interpretation, a live demo doesn't tend to be the best thing. All right, so let's look at how we actually want to do a live demo. First thing you have to do is you have to plan every single step. This is hard to do, but it's really, really, really important, right? How do you actually get into the live demo? How do you move from one step to the next step? How does everything work while you're doing this? You want a good plan from the beginning. Another thing to think about is how do you wrap up the live demo and go back to your slides? This is super, super important. If you have a live demo that you're mixing into the rest of a talk. And I'm curious, everybody should think about how many pages of notes they think I prepared in order to be able to do, a 7-minute lightning talk on this. I think this is going to be kind of interesting to see, and we'll actually look at the notes I have later. If you have your plan, what are the kind of key components of making your live demo a success? The first thing to think about is you've got to work within the projector and the audience view. You can't be trying to make the projector of the audience look at your live demo the way you would while you're working at a desk with a big monitor. You have to go the other direction, right? Put yourself into the shoes of having a low resolution, terrible projector with bad lighting, right? And so I've zoomed all the way in, and this is actually the view that I'm looking at, right? I'm looking at the same thing you're seeing here. And it's important that you kind of learn how to work in that environment and feel comfortable working in that environment. You also have to learn the tools you're going to be presenting. You're going to know them really, really well, much better than you need to actually just use them day to day. And you got to know how to make them work for the demo. If you're going to use Visual Studio Code or an IDE, you need to be able to just jump right into it, pull things up, move around, right? If you want to show a preview, you have to know where it's going to come up. When it doesn't fit easily on the screen, you got to know how to fix that, how to rearrange everything so that you get the view that you want to show the audience, right? I'm a big fan of virtual desktops for live demo. It lets you kind of move between different tools in a way that's pretty smooth. You always have the same layout, the exact thing you're expecting each time you look at it. You want to find this tooling workflow that's going to be effective when you're demoing it live. Next, you have to make this feel real to the audience, right? You don't want to do something that's just going to oversimplify it, right? It's tempting to oversimplify it. In slide code, you don't have to make it compile, but when you're actually doing a live demo, you need stuff to compile. You need it to work with the real tools, and that's really hard. And so, actually use stuff here. And so I'm actually using, I have my editor set up. It does automatic formatting of my markdown here. You want to try and make it real so that people actually see how things work. The next thing is that you do want to make this live in the moment. So you'll see me make mistakes here, right? And that's fine. It's good to actually have some mistakes that you have to correct live, right? And then people can kind of see that, no, this is actually real. It's actually happening live, and it keeps them engaged. The other thing is to never, ever stop talking. And this is, I think, the hardest thing about a live demo. It's especially hard when you're going to actually talk about something that you're not currently typing. And when you're trying to do this, it's very hard to keep it in your head what you're trying to say and what you're trying to type. And you'll notice a technique I'm using here, which is I'm alternating. And so I'll type a word and I'll say a word, and I'll type a word and I'll say a word. It's really hard for your brain to handle text in two different streams. And so have a plan for how to do that and how to make it through it. This is also one of the weird times when things like and hesitations, that's actually fine when you're live demoing, because what you want to do is keep the audience engaged while you have time to make it through your live demo. Next, make it fast and comfortable. One thing you'll notice is that I move fast in a live demo. I move really, really fast. And that's because people can easily get bogged down in the live demo. And so you've got to rush just a little bit. But of course, you can't go too fast or it'll lose people. It's a hard balance to strike. And so I don't have a perfect advice here, but it's something you've just got to do. All right. Next up, okay, I said to plan, scratch all of that. It's not actually about planning. It's about practice. I mean, you need some plans, without a plan. You can do a great live demo with a minimal plan, but you have to practice, right? You have to make it comfortable and fast. And you don't move this, like a lot of people have talked to me after a live demo and they're like, how do you type that fast? By typing the same thing over and over and over again. I don't normally type this fast, but you've got to practice it until you're comfortable and you're fast and you can keep the audience moving. And you have to practice things going wrong. And so you don't get locked into this rigid script. So let things go wrong, mess up intentionally, accidents happen, that's fine. You want to kind of get that full experience when you're practicing. All right. The last thing is you've got to cheat. Sometimes you're going to be very like, I forgot what I'm supposed to type. That's fine. Just have something prepared ahead of time, right? Just pull out a prepared selection of things really fast. This is not a big deal, right? People actually are fine with it. They know things are going to go wrong. The key for you as the presenter is to just roll with it, right? Have those canned bits catch back up. You can even use a pre-filled framework, kind of like what I'm using here, to move yourself through each step of what you want to present. Things do go wrong. Last but not least, you should really be honest and provide your source. This is actually one of my big mistakes that I've made in a lot of talks, is that I don't always kind of upload the source, provide people access to it. This hurts two things, both the credibility. It's really hard for people to believe live demo if they can't reproduce it, but it also hurts accessibility. Like it's nice that I have decent contrast and a big font, but even better is to actually have a Git repository that people can go and check out and correct whatever they've misread. I understand like uploading can be hard. This is actually my problem, is that, if you work for a company, you have to like sort out licenses or something, but I really encourage everyone, try to do this. I'm actually going to try and get this uploaded on my GitHub page just so that I actually have done this yet, but I couldn't get it ready before the talk. But try and actually provide a link to things. It's so helpful if you're doing a live demo to then kind of show all of the inputs so that people can see them. And so with that, I do want to just show you what kind of notes went into the planning for this, right? And so these are all of the notes that I was taking to myself in my initial run through, trying to plan out every step of what I want to do, okay? Hundreds of lines of notes went into a 7-8 minute talk. And so with that, I've done a live demo, and I hope this helps you all do your next live demo, because I think it's a really fun way to engage audiences.
Thank you, Chandler. I do now have Robert and Gabriel here as guests. So just thought I'd bring you into the live stream. So thank you for coming. We already saw Robert's talk, and now I'll be next, followed by Kate, and then Gabriel will speak. So thanks, Chandler. That live demo of live demos was pretty awesome. So myself, that's something I've been starting to think about last year, and I just thought I'd give a little bit of an introduction to it, which is talk factories, just generally how you start making material and how you produce a talk. You know, how do you build a talk? So I wanted to kind of, you know, streamline my own processes for that a bit more, which I can't talk like fully about that right now because it would not fit in Lightning Talk. But generally, the high-level overview is basically when you learn something, you can use the slides as notes, or you can take notes and then turn them into slides. And that can be a process which, you know, gives you a lot of slides, and then you trim down later to peek ahead a little bit. And you know, this can be 1 week. I've done this. Most of those slides are done in a day. Basically, I've played around with AI assistants, and while doing so, I was just doing slides. I was just screenshotting their output, or you know, whatever I wanted to document in slides, I did in parallel. And so within a day, I had most of those slides done. This doesn't work for all talks, and if you want to talk about something specifically, then you know that's clear that you probably, you know, have a longer time frame, especially for conferences, right? You know, it's like you don't need to prepare your talk in 1 week, and especially like, you know, for conferences, you need to start at some point to start working on your talk, and then it's more effective to do a little bit every day than to try to make it in a big push when you have time. You should probably then, you know, find out that you're on the flight to the conference starting to work on your talk. That has happened to some people. So back to our questions, like, you know, how and, you know, can we produce a talk? You basically start at your rough topic, right? You know, the cornerstone of your talk. That's what you should think about. You know, how is it shaped? And start with a rough shape. Maybe the outline already. Some people give outlines as part of the slide titles. Like this is like, some people just write text as outline, but a lot of people just, you know, have a list of things they want to say, and then you could, you know, convert that into a basic set of slides to start. And then you start adding details, right? And then you might figure out that you're missing something to have your talk make sense. And for that, maybe you need to take away something, and then you have basically the layout of your talk, or the basic working of your talk. And then comes the time for polishing. You probably already did some part of that, but now you really have to see how is it working for you. You should start presenting now if you haven't done that already, and just practice the talk in front of an audience, in front of like an empty room is also good at the beginning. And you can start presenting to an audience once you have a lot of material, or enough material, or like a chapter done. But at the beginning, you maybe, you know, just start giving it to yourself, to an empty room, to see how you like the flow, how you want to do things differently maybe. And then the extra content you have, try to keep that around. Bonus slides, which you basically have at the end of your slides, is always a very good thing to have. But think about what should be of your content there. One thing to have in mind is like that when you practice, you get a feeling for, you know, how your talk actually works and how your feeling within the talk is, and then you kind of, you know, have your talk produced. which then basically brings you into the fine tuning. You practice your talk now. Your talk is a presentation, right? It's a slide deck. Practicing will make you confident. Delivery at a conference is very different. You have a room of people ahead, you're nervous, you might be faster, you might be slower. That is fine, but try to plan for both. You might need to speed up at the end of your talk when you spend too much time there. Then the whole topic of people asking you questions during your talk, that can be a big time eater, especially like when people start a discussion in your talk. If you didn't plan for that, or you don't, or you know that you don't have a lot of time left at the end for questions, you might want to tell people that you want to carry on with your talk instead of having a discussion about the last slide and some typo or some random person. Sometimes it happens. Just be aware about that. And then I want to stress that as Robert said, this is an iterative process. You should go through these steps more than once. You should maybe go multiple times usually. And conference talks are usually then polished, and also this process is like basically repeated after you gave the talk at the conference and you maybe giving it at another conference. Then you incorporate the feedback, what you received from the audience, the questions you had. Maybe someone tells, well, on that slide is a typo, which we all have everywhere. So that's just normal. So, which brings me to Kate. Let me quickly find that video. Right, so.
I'm going to talk about one tiny little thing. But I think it's an important thing, and I'll tell you why I think it's important. And it's about ending your talk. As I said, I go to a lot of talks. I like going to talks, and I'm enjoying them. They're fantastic. Someone has got diagrams and explanations of something. This is why Rotate is great. Or they have code, and they're zipping along. They're talking about the future, stuff that's going to happen, and then they bump into this slide, and they stop talking. Or even worse, they bump into this slide. I've seen this on more than one occasion. This isn't better, right? And what happens when this slide comes up is the speaker kind of stops talking. And then sometimes they seem like it really caught them by surprise. They were in a great mood. They were cranking along. Everything was fine. And then up comes the slide that says questions or the whatever. And they go, well, I guess that's all I have. That seems to be it. And like the audience doesn't get their cue to clap. A couple people, kind of try it, but other people don't pick it up because the speaker's still talking and saying, "Oh, I seem to have time for a few questions." And so people are like, "I guess we'll clap when the questions are over." And it's like, who wrote this deck? You wrote this deck on purpose. You should know this deck, and you should have an ending that is not just, well, I don't seem to have any more content to say to you. A couple of people have alluded to these moments that you get in a talk. You can't count on them, but there are these moments. So one of them is the opening. There's probably another whole talk about how to start a talk. A lot of people do it badly. I like to start with the conclusion. This isn't a scientific paper where we're going to lay out all the evidence and then on the very last slide we're going to reveal the exciting conclusion. I like to actually start with the conclusion, but somehow you've got to get their attention to pay mind to what you are saying for the next however many minutes you're going to do it. And so you deliberately structure a great moment in there. And Patricia just gave us a reprise of a really life-changing talk for a lot of people, where she opened with these questions. Have you ever? And wow, that got people's attention. That got people thinking about the problem. A strong opening is amazing. If you are lucky, if the stars align, you may get a moment during a talk. Sean famously, you know, this is a rotate. And the first time he said it, he said, this is obviously a rotate. And it was so not obvious to me that I literally looked around the room at the other people with me to make sure that I was not the only one who didn't think that was obviously a rotate at all. At Meeting C++, I had a series of bullets on a slide, and the last bullet spoke to me so much that I repeated it on a slide of its own. And when I did, I saw all the phones come up to take a picture. Is it important to your ego that you're good at a complicated language? You may have an amazing code example. You may have this really brilliant point that people are going to share on Twitter, that people are going to talk to that one sentence out of your talk over and over. You can't be sure you will have a moment like that in your talk. You can try, but you can't be sure. Even in a great talk, there might not be one. But you get your closing, right? You're guaranteed your closing. So you want to structure that closing to be one of those moments. And the most important thing about that is to end on purpose. To not just trail off, to not just say, well, I guess I must stop talking now. To have a deliberate ending. I believe that every talk should have a call to action. You don't have to label it call to action. It's not wrong if you do, but lately I've been putting, what do I want you to do, at the top of the slide. You know, if you've written a great library and you're coming to give a talk about my library is a great library, then your call to action is probably use my library. It's great. But it could be join the team to help maintain this library. You know what it is, right? Or if you've discovered a lovely technique like Claire's code highlighting technique, then the call to action is, hey, you should highlight your code, make your code easier to read on slides, and I've shown you how to do it. Sometimes someone, especially if the talk has like disaster or fiasco or whatever in the title, their call to action is the opposite. They want you to stop doing something. And like, you don't need to hide this. This is the point. This is why you came to talk for 5 minutes or 15 minutes or 60 or 90 minutes, so that people would start doing a thing. So take some time and figure out what that is that you want. But then you should also have a closing sentence. You're going to signal that you're done. And there's several parts to this. One is your actual sentence, which I'll talk about in a minute. But there's also a particular inflection, a particular rhythm of your words that says, I've reached the end of the sentence, I've reached the end of the paragraph, I've reached the end of the chapter, you know? And they all lived happily ever after. That rhythm, we recognize it immediately. It's a little more pauses between the words and a little kind of down drop. Everybody knows that's the end thing. So after you say your closing sentence, you pause for a couple of beats, and then you say, thank you. Believe me, they will applaud. That is, everybody knows the cue. There's a script. When you do that and then you say, thank you, they all go, yay. Even if you weren't really that good, they're still going to do that, okay, for sure, because they now know they're done. Now you can put the resources up behind you, or you can put the questions up, you know, slide, Q&A, whatever, something like that for them to look at while you're answering questions, because you don't necessarily want to be sitting on your call to action slide. Don't read it out. Don't say, so I have a blog, it's here, and you can see that I'm sometimes on Twitter and da-da-da. Just leave it there. Maybe say, here's some resources that you might find helpful. But let's come back to that closing sentence. And that is why everybody should, whatever it is you think everybody should. So please join me in doing something or another more often, or no longer doing something, or whatever, you know, you want them to do something. So please join me in doing that, right? So you see, you really can, whatever it is. But one of my tricks, which is working pretty well for me, is to have a talk that has a title that the title itself makes a good closing sentence. Then what I can do when I get to the end is I can press home, and we'll go back to the screen where the title is in great big letters along with my contact information, and everyone will know we're done. And that, my friends, is how you end a talk. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Kate. And there's one more contribution we have. Gabriel, could you share your screen?
Let's start. Hello, everyone. My name is Gabriel Venezuela. Thank you, Jens, for the opportunity to join this lightning talk. I am software engineer in WASU. I pursued my master's degree in software engineering also. I am from Cordoba, Argentina, and I teach in the college, in the university. And this talk is very short and is more like a history about how I made my first talk in the Meeting C++ for a non-native speaker English. Probably you should notice by my pronunciation. It's try to be improved every day, but it's sometimes difficult. So my first talk was in 2022. Was a pre-recorded talk where I speak about my degree thesis. In that moment was related with the Petri networks. And like previously Kate exposed, the thesis of my talk was present this tool as an innovation form to make programming and prove that it's possible to make a C++ software using Petri networks in a concurrent way, making focus in that. So when I make the proposition for this talk, the second later was I shouldn't do that because English is not my strong, and probably everyone is fear about speaking in English in public. For a non-native speaker, is sometimes difficult make this pronunciation of the word or find the correct words while you're making your exposition. But English should not be the barrier to make a presentation. You can always make an improvement of the English skills and be tactical about how you express your ideas. Because sometimes you don't remember the words or you don't have the correct pronunciation of the word in that moment in the middle of the presentation, you can always skip it and make it the description of the that idea you try to speak. So you can do it. Of course, making a talk is overlap over the barrier of the language, and of course try to prepare a plan to make a talk. As previously exposed the speakers, like yes, you need to make a planning about how you want to say, and this is the key about giving a talk. When I made this first talk, my idea was clear. I want to find a story that make it the audience feel a trap for that story. Probably Petri network was topical, very theoretic for some people, but in the programming world has a lot of applications. So I want to find the story of telling people why Petri net is useful and proof that it is not a new concept. It's coming from 16 years. So when I found the story to tell, the next step was shape the message. So express the message in the simple words where I can say it without getting blocked. And of course, always have a feedback when you make revisions or ask somebody to keep the opinions about your talk. Is always useful to find this feedback because you made little steps to perform the talk. I asked my professor in that moment, and I asked for Jens for help, and that feedback helped me a lot to make the fine tuning of my talk. And when it's ready, I launch it, and praise was good. But the most important thing I get from that talk and another talk I made is that I learned a lot. It's a reciprocal learning approach when you make a talk for your audience, and your audience teaches a lot about how you made it, and with question and so on. It's a feedback very useful. So I made it a quick talk. If you have any question, please feel free to read me. Like final quote, don't be afraid. You can do it. English should not be a very blocking barrier. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Gabriel. Which we're almost at the panel. There's, I think, one more thing. Let me look into my slides. No, that's the slides, the presentation here. All right. So thank you, Kate. And now we are at Gabriel. Thank you, Gabriel.
You're welcome.
One more thing I wanted to talk about is how to submit your talk to Meeting C++ or any other conference, right? So these are like the links you need to know, like the conference link and the link to the form to submit. And of course, take this with a grain of salt. That's my own opinion as a conference organizer, and a lot of the stuff I think about this is very technical, and I'm trying not to go too deep into this. So of course you need to create an account and subscribe to the newsletters. Create your speaker bio, and you can join the review group and add, that you want to receive email notifications. Make sure that the bio has something meaningful. I see that some people are just, creating a bio and then not filling it. And if your talk gets accepted, you need to remember that you need to fill this. Also, some people can see the bio and then probably will see it's just, I see that people just fill in their software engineer or something. So at least make it a 1 or 2 sentences about yourself that people know who you are. And if you want to add a link, that's possible with a change symbol. And that's also true when you submit your talk, okay? That's something which I will get back to. Now you're ready to basically submit your talk. And let's look at the details. Talk title, please keep the talk titles short. People seem to make them longer every year, and sometimes I think that, should I add like a subtitle where people can, put like the comma sentence before their title or after the title. In the schedule, space is limited, and I will have to see how to deal with that. But yeah, so I think shorter titles, if you can get a good short title, that's probably a lot better than creating a long title which tries to explain what you're talking about. Because for that is a talk description, and if you have stuff you can link, like the page that seems to be referenced, maybe a link to the library you're presenting on, etc., then use a change symbol and add the link into your talk description. And that's basically everything I said. But for the talk title, I especially want to point out that you should avoid certain characters, and because of HTML entity conversion, other things which distracts and stuff which basically adds more information to it. Also, code is something which I personally don't think is like a good thing in a talk title. And all those have, of course, they are exceptions when that's okay. And good titles are engaging. So how how we using C++ standard for memes, introductions, overviews. And well-known speakers get away with way more than when you submit your first talk, right? So a title can be engaging, but this is more important for new speakers, because maybe I just know that I want to have a certain speaker at the conference, and they can submit a talk, and maybe I'll talk to them to change the title if it's not engaging enough or something. But generally, the talk description, I've talked about that already. What your talk is about, more than one paragraph. You can include code snippets, use pre in this case. It's not a blog post. Link to the important things. Check the HTML for copy and paste artifacts. If your talk description is too long, if it's like a blog article, people might think that you just ask the AI to generate something. And similar goes for the outline. So don't have it too short, but also not too long. And generally, we've had a few submissions last year which more or less obviously were submitted or created with AI. And I think that it's getting really hard to exclude those. Or I thought last year, should I make a rule for this year to exclude those? But it's basically impossible to do that. But your talk will not get through the voting anyways in a good condition when you use a lot of code that is, or a lot of other things, or auto-generated code, which or text from various AI tools. On the other hand, I know that some people use AI and ChatGPT and all the other things to give them basically their talk description and say, hey, improve it. And I don't know if that's a good idea or not. For non-native English speakers, it might be a good idea. Might give you some ideas, and then still read what it generated, because it will make up things and you need to add your links again, etc. And yeah, so one thing I wanted to mention is like you already know how to add links with a chain symbol, but these braces are where you can check the HTML of what you pasted in there, and you should do that. The outline is, how do you envision your talk? Talk chapters, slide titles. A lot of people write a lot of things in there, but that is not public when the conference is live, right? This is just for the review. It's a free text field. You can do whatever you want there, but people will look at this and want to get a feel for you. It should all be what is not in the talk description, or what should not be in the talk description. Generally, how you plan for your talk, like the meta information, right? And there's not really a rule what should be in there or not. And who should come to your talk is also a question which you hopefully already asked yourself. Orientation, expect folks to ignore this, but this is basically what this beginner, intermediate, advanced is for. And so people may see this and then they have a set expectation. It's also a good idea to basically state that at the beginning of your talk, so that people have the expectations of what you expect for your talk and not what they expect for your talk. Anyways, then I have all those options, which I think I'll go through now. I have this option where you basically say this talk has not been presented at a different conference, and that basically helps me choose maybe your talk a bit more, because I need to have some talks which haven't been at other conferences, but it will not have a big effect. But I thought after a while that I should have a way to know about that. I do have a submission review system, so you can check for if you want to have your submission reviewed, and all the things I've said in this talk might be what I've been giving you as feedback. Often I just tell people that it's fine, but I don't check for your spelling mistakes if it's not obvious. And I don't have often the time to do an in-depth review of your talk submission. But I can, tell you things like you have something in your outline which should be in the second paragraph of your talk description, or you should add a paragraph. Or you have this one big paragraph which describes your talk, which is like a monolith, and maybe you should split it up into 2 or 3. And stuff like that helps people review your submission, but also will help you and help me have your talk be better visible at the website later. If you have a co-presenter, then basically you should check the box for that, and that triggers the second speaker bio form, which then will be closed in the talk later. And the online-only boxes, yes, we're hybrid, so we have an online track, and some people don't want to speak on site or cannot speak on site because they cannot travel or for various reasons. And so that's a good way to start your speaking career, and that's what I also start picking from for the online track. Okay. I want to mention that there's no on-site only, because either your talk is rejected for on-site and you have still the potential chance to present online, or your talk is rejected. And so there's no way to tell me that you don't want to speak online, because then you don't check that box, right? And the problem doesn't exist for me. And last, of course, you need to submit your talk. If you don't submit your talk, then nobody will be knowing about your talk idea. And there's many good talks, I think, which we still need to have. Many ideas haven't been spoken about. Also, like, be aware to maybe submit more than one talk idea, because there's often a very popular topic which people feel that they should present on, like stuff they know well or they want to learn. CMake is a classic example for that. Coroutines has been another very classic example in the last years. Submitting on a standard, you compete with other speakers in this field. Maybe just shoot a different idea into the race of talks being accepted, and maybe you get lucky with that one. And yeah, generally you'll be able to edit it until we start the voting, which for this year will probably be next week, Monday, if things align. And as I mentioned, in the voting, the talk info is visible, the speaker info, the speaker bio is not. But some folks, and I think that's my team, myself, and speakers which have an accepted talk in the database, will probably be able to see your speaker info too, and then look at it. And it's not such a big influence, but if it's like just a liner or just says TBA, to be filled out or something, that's not the best impression. But I don't know if there's like really a big problem for your talk. But of course, I will probably notice. And the selection for the tracks then later is guided by the voting results. And with that, thank you for listening. Submit your talk until June 4th. And these are the links again, questions into the comments. But that's been it with the lightning talks. Let's start the panel with an introduction round.
So, was that already my cue? Okay, hi, I'm Robert. Nice to meet you, everybody. I had to pre-record my talk because I had a user group meeting in parallel, and I was just giving a summary of an ACCU keynote to my friends at the user group Vienna. I'm a software engineer, big surprise here. I've been writing software for 25 years, 15 with C++ and Qt. So if you have Qt questions, I might be the person you're looking for. And otherwise, yeah, I'm always learning new stuff. And lately I have come for the taste of conferences, and I have also been a guest on the ISO meeting in Hagenberg. So at the moment, I'm really diving into the C++ community and enjoying the feeling very much.
Okay, yeah, I go. Hello everyone, my name is Gabriel. Nice to meet you all. I'm from Argentina, Cordoba. I at least 5 years working with C++. I started using for my thesis, and I feel love for the language. And now I trying to share knowledge about C++, and at least for Argentina, trying to carry on some community based here in Cordoba. Well, my experience is more about a little C++ in general.
Okay, so me next. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I just had to change my mic over. So I'm Phil Nash. Yeah, thanks, Robert. I wasn't on the talks tonight, but I did do one a couple of years ago. So I think I'm sort of a alumni now, so at my place on this panel. But I've also done far too many talks over the years, so I have a little bit of experience on that side, and also as a conference organizer like Jens from the other side as well. So hopefully I've got something to say.
Indeed. So yeah, that will be our panel tonight, and I hope you have some questions. Actually, while I have while I have a conference organizer here, let me pick your brain, Phil, on the talk titles. Talk title inflation. How do you feel about speakers making their talk titles longer and longer?
Probably good for YouTube SEO, but I've not seen quite as much of that as maybe you have. In fact, actually, I'm just looking at the call for speakers system for C++ on C, and I can see there are actually a few very long ones. So maybe you're onto something there. But I haven't given it much thought. So not sure I can answer your question.
Question, Jens. How long is too long in your opinion?
That's a good question. Too long is when it doesn't fit in a tweet anymore. Too long is when when your talk title is getting out of hand with the layout of the schedule or with the layout of the page. And I've often just go ahead and just cut your talk title to a length where I think that's appropriate. There's some people like doing like a subtitle with and then that is the title of the talk, or the other way around. I could look in the overview and give you some examples for this here, but I'm not sure about that. Yeah. But I have an overview where here basically I think like you're fine when you have like 2 lines of text, but I think I've had people like have like 3 or 4 lines in here, and I think that's a bit too long. And especially like some people like to put like I think when you make it shorter, it's better. But it doesn't mean that it has to be like 2 or 3 words. But I think like if your talk title has like 10 words or more, then maybe you should think about if it could be shorter. And generally the problem is just with layout or communicating your talk. Like there's there needs to be some other text in a tweet which links to your talk, and then your talk title, your name. And yeah, Phil called out YouTube. That's the end of the journey for your talk. That you need to have a YouTube title, and the YouTube title is not endless. So I I will need to make a decision then, what to do with your YouTube title. And the YouTube title, again, is your name, right? Also including, should it include your name? So that's just generally, something which I've noticed over the years. But mostly it's okay. It's not a big issue.
Just looking at this CFP data, there's 3 talks that I'd say have particularly long names. All of them have a colon in there somewhere, so you can consider them talk, title and subtitle. And I think that's probably the intention.
That's
Probably the best strategy for that is balance between title and the talk description. Play with that 2 factors and combine it in the best way.
And I think when you have a colon in your title, then often the text before the colon should be discarded. And it's just, it's like this, and then this is a call to action, and then the call to action, or just generally, this is already a good title and tells people where to come to your talk. And you have your whole talk description to talk about things. And yeah, anyways.
While we are waiting for questions on the chat, I've got a question for you again. It's just following on from what we were talking about, really. But one of the things that we've started doing is giving speakers a chance to have a different title for YouTube compared to what goes in the conference program, because there are ways to rewrite that title to be more YouTube friendly and get more reach. Is that something you've been doing as well?
I haven't thought about that. I know that there's ways to do SEO on YouTube, and generally, if you contact me, or that's the other thing, that sometimes people change their titles anyways for their talks, because that's okay then, and I can change the title when I publish it. Just shoot me an email. But that's actually also a good way.
Yeah, definitely something to consider, and also advertise that up front so people know they haven't got to get the right YouTube title for the conference itself. May make a difference.
That's actually a good idea.
I have a question too, related with the new one who want to make a talk based on your experience, because everyone starts from the beginning. What was your best advice that keep you to help you to kick a talk in a conference?
So for me, it was preparing the talk for my user group. Because I started the user group, I needed to get content, so I needed a talk. So I made one. And when I got the feedback that the talk was really good, or they felt it was really good, it was like, oh, maybe I should submit it to a conference. And then I said, okay, I will submit it to a conference so I get feedback on how I better should submit my talk next time. And then I got accepted, and then there was no getting out of it anymore. So at least for me, it helps if you commit yourself to something, even if it's scary. But that gives you a little bit of pressure that you need to follow through with it.
So did you mean advice on getting started writing the talk, or that actually helped you to give the talk, or afterwards, as Robert described? Was it one of those you had in mind, Gabriel?
Yes, I think it's Robert is has right about giving a prepared talk for a specific group. And for me, I consider that prepare a script and it's very helpful, because it helps you to order your ideas and prepare more easy the talk.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of advice, and I think for a new speaker, don't worry so much about it. And I think one of the best advices I remember is like to actually make sure that you drink enough before the talk, that you're not dehydrated at the end, and to basically have some way to know your time. So either you're wearing a watch, which that's not anymore the case. We have like phones and stuff. So you should set up a timer somewhere, somehow, that you know what your timing is, how your timing is. And you shouldn't be surprised when the presentation is like, on a different machine or not like in a setting as you practiced in. I'm very much used to do a lot of things freehand and to speak freely, which helps me in the situation. But people that maybe have their talks scripted out and follow their speaker notes might have a problem when their speaker notes are not available or not that readable on the stage they're speaking, and suddenly they are just are like wondering, what did I write there again? And so yeah. And practice, of course. Practice is, I think, the best experience and the best advice everybody can give you.
Definitely agree with the practice, but actually one warning there, which is you're probably going to be practicing at home or somewhere else, like the same place regularly, and just the way the mind works, you tend to build associations with things, and you get really good at doing a talk in that location. And when you're a new speaker, when you actually get up on a stage, especially if it is a real stage, but at least, up at the front of the room, looking out with a different perspective, you will be surprised. It will sort of just mentally catch you out. You think, actually, this isn't what I prepared for. And then you're sort of, you're already a little bit anxious. Now you're panicking even more because it's just another thing you hadn't thought of that's been thrown at you. So first of all, be prepared for that, but don't let that put you off. Really easy way to get around that, which is just to make sure that before you give the talk, if you can, ideally a day or two before, if you're going to a conference and you arrive early, actually go to the room where you're going to be speaking and get up to the place you're going to be speaking from and look out at the hopefully empty room. Maybe there's a few people there, but you'll just put yourself in that perspective and just let that, sink in. You think that this is where I'm going to be speaking. Okay, right. Now I've got a new anchor point. And then you can go away and you don't even have to consciously think about it. Subconsciously, you'll just be processing that and adding into your expectation of what giving this talk going to be like. And that won't throw you anymore. Other things might, but that won't. That's one of the biggest things that I think you probably hadn't thought of if you're a new speaker. It actually can be quite a big deal.
Everything Phil said, and another little trick. When I prepared for ACCU, I checked the videos from previous year for the same room to see where the screen would be, where my speaker table would be. So I had an idea on the size of the room and the position of the screen, which helped me even in preparing the talk.
Which is a really good idea, and you should probably do it. But again, with just the caveat that sometimes we move things about. It may not be the same from year to year, so just be aware, but most of the time you'll be okay.
I take in note for future on-site presentation. I don't have the opportunity yet for be in the room, but I take the Robert and Phil advice.
Yeah, so there's a question. This is a question where I think everybody can just speak on. You mentioned that more and more people use AI for their proposals. I am not sure about that because we don't yet have like a checkbox to let us know that. But there has been last year some submissions where it was a bias, and I saw that generally more people will probably do it this year. And And what do I consider an acceptable level of AI involvement nowadays? That's a good question. I think that the talk you created should still come from your own knowledge and not from the knowledge that basically, of course you can, give the greatest C++ talk and then have everything be created through ChatGPT, and you probably will not notice all the hallucinations. And so last year we had one talk where there was a title, and then the talk description said, in this talk, quoting a different title. So everyone directly kind of was like, why did they submit that? And why didn't they even fix that? So some people seem to be a bit overconfident with that. I think that, as I said, for some people, it's a way to improve their English. And I think that's fine. I think that some people are really, I think right now we're a bit split in the community. There's probably some people which don't care, and then some people which find it off-putting, and some people which just find it the current hype and they like it. And I myself, as a conference organizer, don't put myself really on a soapbox there to just, at the end, the voting decides if your talk is like if your submission is successful or not. But if I have doubts that you are able to deliver the talk or to create the talk because you're not a well-known speaker, and the talk length and all the other things might speak for that, that might also already achieve that you don't have such a good rating in the voting that you're naturally sorted out. So, and it would be really interesting to get some opinions in the panel on just generally AI usage.
So I would say vibe talking is not cool, but so I would argue that as a speaker, you are responsible for your talk and for the content you bring and for the way you present it. That's your responsibility. I would say I'm pretty flexible on how we get there. So I could well imagine a talk where slides are created by AI. See Daisy Holman's keynote, for example, which was about AI. So there's maybe the rules are a bit ACCU keynote for those who have not seen it. Otherwise, for example, generating code examples with AI and then so that they really do what they are supposed to do and they really work the way they are supposed to work. I think that would be fine from my perspective. Personally, I think I enjoy tinkering too much. Maybe I need to change my habits.
I'm going to read something that I think summarizes my feelings quite well. So the key principle is authenticity. The proposal should represent a talk you can generally give based on your real experience and knowledge. AI as a writing assistant is generally fine, but AI as a ghostwriter for expertise you don't possess crosses ethical lines. Where did I get this from? Well, I plugged the same question into Claude.ai, and this is what it gave me. So that's the AI generated response to that question, and I happen to completely agree with it. So yeah, so polishing off some of your ideas or the way you construct certain words to get a particular meaning obviously is all fine, but producing the content maybe crosses those lines. But one thing I do see a lot is people using generative AI to generate images to sort of support or be backgrounds on their slides. I've done this myself, even sort of quite recently. The trouble is it's become so much of a thing that when people see that now, it's like, oh no, not another one of these. So it's like one of these sort of fashion trends that seems like a really good idea for a while, and then it's like a really bad idea the next day. So just be careful of that sort of thing as well.
Yes, I agree too. If you make all with AI, you probably miss up the sense of your talk because you want to transmit your ideas, your opinion, your you work in something and AI doesn't know what you do. Probably it's more like use, but don't abuse of AI, because it's useful for sometimes make it for grammar ideas and sentences and so on connectors, but don't leave all work for the AI, because it's a pretty slide, but empty of that essence that make it the talk itself.
Yeah, I mean, I've given in spring a talk about using AI for coding. So naturally, I used a lot of AI to create the talk and the content, and I think that's of course very fine. I think the problem with AI is that when you generate text with it, you get a lot of text, and if you're not good in English, you might not notice how much of that text actually makes sense, and how much of that text might be just filler or also just contradicting. And so you really need to check everything twice when you generate stuff with AI, especially text for submissions. And I don't know if it's a good idea to basically say, this is my talk description, generate the outline or something, because basically in the outline, people have expectations and the AI might not know about that. And so I don't have good data on that. I just think that every year these systems will be slightly different. And if AI has, stopped improving or not is a different question. And it's just like for me, but also for Phil, it's just something which we now have to accept it's there. People will use it. And I think nobody is helped with, last year I contemplated about just making a rule against it and saying we don't want that. And I'd prefer people writing their own talk subscriptions, etc., descriptions, outline. But that's not the world which we are in anymore. And on the other hand, if you use AI too much, the AI will not give you a talk. The AI will not practice your talk. You probably will have a lot of work ahead to polish things out which the AI has generated. And as Robert mentioned, code examples, the AI, I had Grok give me a code example, and then also generated it generated a test, and it showed the results of that test and said everything is passing, this is fine, and it was very convincing. And if you copy paste that code into a compiler explorer, it actually lets the test run, and the test results are totally different. So all that was made up. So similar problems probably will exist when you try to have AI help you with your talk submission. All right. Let us know if you have any more questions, and otherwise we'll probably go into the launch and just hang out there a bit if you like.
So is there anybody watching this feed who is either looking to get started as a speaker, or maybe they're already a speaker, given a few talks, and they're looking to go to the next level, and they just feel that there's maybe something holding them back, or some question you want answered? Now's the time to ask us, and maybe we'll have an answer for you. Maybe we won't, but you'll never know.
We will try to do our best.
I've actually got another question to put to the rest of you. I mean, as a regular speaker myself, many times I've written a talk and then I'll give it multiple times at various different conferences and meetups and other things. And I know other people say they only ever give a talk once and then they move on to a different one. What's your feeling on that? Is there like an upper limit to the number of times you can give a talk? Basically the same talk. You always evolve it a little bit, of course, but basically essentially the same talk multiple times at different events.
I think it's like Jens says, it's an iterative process. So every time you make a talk, there is something new that the feedback in the audience helps you to improve. Something to modify, to add, to delete, and also public always renew. So always you have a new idea from the audience in the different conference. I think it's like a trade-off, because you can never keep the same talk always because it's oversaturated, but there is a reasonable number of times you can keep the same talk without losing the audience.
Could you put a number to it?
That is hard to guess the right number, but I think it's 4 times, 5 times, maybe. Depends on how many times the space between every talk you keep talk.
I did give one talk, I think 8 times, and I think the 8th one was the best one. But that was unusual. I would agree that once you start getting past about 4 or 5, it's probably too many, but yeah, it depends. Sorry, Robert, interrupted you.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I think for me personally, preparing a talk is too much work to only give it once. So I would give it several times, and as Gabriel said, it evolves. It's a bit different. I think maybe it's an asymptotic. It reaches a quality level eventually, and then I think it won't move far unless, I mean, of course, you can say, okay, I throw away half of it and I rewrite it because I re-engineered the talk to be a different talk, which happens to have maybe half of the content be the same, because it's like the basics that you need to understand the other part or whatever. For me, I think the limit is that I try it on every conference and then I will lay it to rest. And should a user group happen to ask me for it, I will probably oblige. But then it's time for something new.
So it's like those bands that were really big in the 70s, but now they're just doing the like seaside towns in the north of England or something.
Yeah, I think it's fine, and also it's kind of a luxury problem some speakers have that they do that, and I can understand it. And as Robert said, it's like, I mean, I've done it, Phil done it. Usually people prepare one talk per year and then they tour the conferences if they want to, or if they can, it's just some people can do that, and maybe it's part of your job to go to every conference. It used to be my job, but then COVID came. And so I've spoken and given the same talk at various conferences. And the only thing I basically stopped doing is like giving talks at my own conference on site, because that's just, as a conference organizer, it's too much. That's just not possible. And now I, just sometimes they have to give a few talks to fill the online track. But generally, I think on talk submissions, at some point, I, as an organizer, have a hard time to accept a talk which isn't that interesting and has been given like 3 or 4 times at other conferences, because I have to, see what's the value of the audience, or for the audience to see the talk again, versus on a conference versus having a recording online. And to that, one thing which some people might not see is that people are at the conference to watch talks, but they lack the time to watch the recording. So it's very much fine to submit your talk, and then it's up to the program committee to say, hey, we want to have that talk or not. And at some point, just as Phil said, like 8 times is cool. If you speak a lot at user groups, if you travel a lot, that's easy to do. But maybe you should stop speaking at C++ 11 when you did your talk 10 years ago, and then at some point you need to update it anyways, or you have a new idea. And that's the other thing is I think especially like experienced speakers like Phil or myself and all the others, at some point you just want to speak about something different.
Yeah.
I actually would have a question for you. What do you think are good topics for talks for the, let's say, coming months and year? Things that are interesting and which are underrepresented currently. These questions, of course, mainly go to the conference organizers.
Mm-hmm. Good question. I'm not sure if Phil is frozen, so I'll go ahead. So I think tooling talks and stuff is generally. So first, maybe let's go on the opposite. What is I think like stuff with a new standard is a good topic, but it's also a topic which probably will bring you competition by well-known speakers. As I mentioned, tooling talks are something which is always appreciated. Introductions is something which we rarely get. So if you want to introduce a library, I think it's very much fine to speak about a library. If it's your own library, cool. If you just want to do an introduction about recent libraries submitted to Boost, or new things in Qt this year, or new things in some other library. Game dev is something which is underrepresented in our field, unfortunately. So we don't have so many game dev submissions. And then that would be definitely something which is appreciated. In some years, we didn't have a lot of embedded topics. I think this year we do. And then just submit multiple ideas to, not just have one horse in the race.
I personally would add 2 topics repeat with Jens. I consider the back to basics sometimes useful for new viewers in the conference. It's good to know or see the overview from somebody who has experience with C++ about the basic topic. The language could be sometimes a little rough for somebody new. And another topic is interesting is about the application industry, like the game devs or embedded system, high performance computing. See how the language evolves and adapts to many important areas in the industry and has a potential for many more.
Yeah.
So while we try getting Phil back into the meeting, if possible, I might have a follow-up question for you, Jens, because you mentioned like libraries or, for example, Qt, things like that. Now the question for me is, when such a talk goes to voting, isn't there like a large proportion of people who say, okay, this is a very specialized library or topic. I'm not going to vote for this talk because it's so specialized, I'm not interested in it. And only a small minority would say, oh, that's really cool, I would like to hear about that. What's your opinion on that?
That's why I chose different talks for the conference. That in the end, I have this day where I get the voting results and I get to decide who speaks and who doesn't speak. And there's always outliers. Maybe there is that one talk about game dev and our audience isn't too much speaking about game dev, so it doesn't do too well. But I say, actually, that's a new speaker, and I think we should pull that person into the conference and see what they have to say. And maybe that is an important topic. That is a cool library they wrote, or that's a popular library. And I want to have that covered in the conference because ultimately speakers are not the audience, and that's why we switched from having program committees full of speakers to have more open systems where people can contribute to reviewing talks. And so now Phil is here back again. So
I was going to try and do some ventriloquism, make it look like I was still frozen, but I couldn't quite pull it off. So yeah, I didn't quite catch the beginning of Robert's question, but I think we're talking about topics that are not necessarily have broad appeal, but they're really important to a certain group of people. Is that right?
That was not the original question. So the original question was, what are good topics to submit to conferences in the next months or year? Maybe topics that are underrepresented in your view. Yeah, that was the initial question.
Yeah, and I think Jens covered it quite well, actually, talking about particularly beginner topics have been very underrepresented, I think, because we sort of went through all that years ago, and now we feel like, oh, that's done. We need to move on to other things, particularly as, the people who are giving the talks are generally the more experienced people, have been around for a while, been there, done that. So I think having, like CPPCon has been doing for a few years, C++ on C has been doing for the last 2 years now, I think it's working really well. It's having a designated track just for those topics. CPPCon calls it Back to Basics, C++ and C, C++ Fundamentals. By doing that, it sort of gives speakers permission to say, actually, let's go back to basics, revisit these things. Actually, it could be quite fun. And then having the experienced speakers speak about basic topics has its own dynamic. It's like, it's not something I've just discovered. This is something that, I thought everybody knew, but actually it turns out they don't. And we've got a chance to go over it all again. So it's actually quite liberating doing that. So we're starting to solve that one. But I think still a lot of beginners come to these conferences and think, senders, receivers, what's all that about? That's a bit over my head. But yeah, we need to make sure that we advertise that we do have accessible content for beginners, not just pure beginners, but people maybe have been in the industry for a few years, but because they've not been exposed to a lot of this back to basics material, maybe they haven't actually seen it before, and that they could do with a refresher. And even those who are more experienced can do with a refresher. So that one's really important. But also, I think, we do tend to have a lot at the other end. This thing that's going to, didn't quite make it into C++ 26. We're hoping it's going to be in C++ 29. Let's talk about that. It's fine to have a bit of that. That could be quite fun, but it seems to be a lot of the material that's submitted is on that sort of exciting end of the spectrum, not necessarily the practical end. I think the practical end is probably where we are missing a lot. And some of the more industry-specific things, again, mentioned game dev. I think some other areas were mentioned. You have to be a bit more careful there, and then I think that comes into your second question, Robert, about the more niche topics. We need a place for those. But again, we need some balance. And if you've got multiple tracks, the more tracks you've got, the more scope you've got to put on some of those more niche topics. So Also depends on the nature of the conference, but this is what we need to think about as conference organizers. It's not just a, let's rank all of the talks, from best to worst, and we'll just pick the best ones and that's it, job done. No, you've got to balance the different types of topics, the different audiences you want to attract. And it's not easy. I don't always get it right.
But that's really good news for me, because when I plan a talk, I have to plan it so I can give it to my user group, because that's why I need it also. And fundamentals, basics, that's things that work well for user groups, at least for if you don't have like a user group of experts. Yeah, that sounds like a plan for me.
Keep up the good work.
To give an example, like talks on coroutines, talk submissions on coroutines are a thing still, but we had years where basically we had like at meetings it was 8 or 10 talks where people were excited to speak about coroutines. And this has two effects.
My second one.
It pulls all those talks in the popularity a bit down, because when you have a system that shows you various talks and you are reviewing them, the first coroutine talk you probably see gets you excited, yay, coroutines. But the 8th does not anymore get the same. And there's a gradient between the 1st and the 8th. And as you know, our systems nowadays randomize the order of talks you see. It will not always be the first talk. This is not always the same talk which gets that excitement. And so this basically levels out. And then how many talks on coroutines do you want to have at the conference, right? Maybe there's 2 talks which cover different topics and can, make the problem of which talk you want to attend for the audience better. And then, yes, sure, you can I've recently asked people what is on their mind, what would they like to see as topics, just to give people an idea on to let people know that they can submit. And one thing which seems to be popular with LinkedIn right now is project ideas. So talk about your project. You're welcome to try if that's like a thing which goes through. And then on the other hand, it's just what's not submitted cannot be accepted. And on the other hand, sometimes I think, why do people want to speak about something like, which is like so far in the future? I think that's like a problem which we have with conferences. Like we have like modules talks, which are now probably 10 years old. And I'm glad that we still have people talking about modules, because there's still a lot of things to say about it. But on the other hand, I've seen in reviews of other conferences, also my own conference, say people, we had a talk about that last year. Why should we have someone else talk about coroutines this year?
To be fair, you do need to see a few coroutines talks before you really get them. But yeah, we're mostly done now.
You always can, co-await the next talk on coroutines.
Exactly, yeah. Keep some in suspense.
And generally, maybe also be ready for questions from the audience. And that, I've seen those talks where then basically the audience starts a discussion. And also there's thinking about there was one person, I think it was about exceptions speaking, and the person who had put that in the standard was in the audience, and the person on exceptions speaking didn't really do the research, and so That's the other thing which you should have in mind. Like when your talk is accepted, you really need to do your research, especially if you speak about standard topics. If you're not on the committee, you should ask committee folks to, give you the updates and to know about what you're saying. And I've even have seen that some committee members were worried about what they're going to say about that standard papers which still in flight, and they're just talking about it because it's a popular topic, and so.
That is a good advice. It's the key. Be ready for the question, and sometimes be ready for say, thank you, I will make a research, I give you the answer as soon as possible, because sometimes the knowledge escapes in the conference, and it's okay. It's not a terrible mistake.
I think we've done such a good job. The audience knows all the answers.
Yeah.
Which I did.
All right. I guess we're going to call it a closing then. Thank you for watching tonight and for being with us. Thank you for all your talks and your preparations and your contributions. And with that, I think we're going to end the stream. And thank you.
Thanks all.
Bye-bye. Thank you.